sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the dusty trail. The air simmered with the day's heat, and a gentle breeze carried the faint, sweet scent of wildflowers. But ahead, near the edge of a whispering forest, the mood shifted, thickening with tension. She could feel it, a prickle along her spine, as if the world itself held its breath. Marissa had journeyed these trails many times before, her heart steady, but today was different. The quiet was unsettling. She hiked alone, just her and the rhythm of her boots against the earth, gripping the leather straps of her satchel filled with supplies for her small homestead. She loved the solitude, the vastness of the open fields where her spirit could roam free. But out here, among the trees that loomed like silent sentinels, something felt wrong. Then she saw him. A figure emerged from the underbrush, tall and cloaked, the sun glinting off the metal of a weapon strapped to his side. Her heart raced as she recognized the look in his eyes, predatory, hungry. A bandit, panic ignited like wildfire in her chest. His voice was grating, dripping with menace. "We're gonna have ourselves a little chat." Marissa swallowed hard, her throat tight as she forced herself to analyze the situation. She could see the iron grip he had on his knife, the way he stepped closer, like a hawk circling its prey. Fear clawed at the corners of her mind, and the fight-or-flight instinct danced wildly within her. She weighed her options. She could run, but he could easily catch her. She could plead for mercy, but once a bandit had made up his mind, mercy was often an afterthought. But then, amid the chaos of her thoughts, she remembered a lesson from her mother. Bravery isn't the absence of fear, it's the choice to act despite it. Drawing in a shaky breath, she steadied herself. I don't have much," she stammered, her voice trembling but determined. He snapped, brandishing his dagger. Just then, as he took a step forward, a low rumble echoed from the woods. A sound that wasn't just thunder, but something more profound. It had weight, a promise of turmoil. From the cover of the trees, a horse emerged, sleek and powerful, galloping like a shadow across the fading light. The horseman rode with the kind of grace that spoke of hard-earned skill. His eyes, dark like the deepest night, locked onto the bandit with a fierce intensity, unwavering and steady. There was a calmness about him, a silent strength that contrasted sharply with the chaos of the moment. Marissa felt her heartbeat slow, a flicker of hope igniting within her. The horseman reined in his steed, dust swirling around them in a halo of golden light. He appeared almost ethereal, a guardian sent from another realm, and for the first time she felt the weight of fear lift from her shoulders. "Let her go," he called, his voice deep and commanding, slicing through the tension like a knife. The bandit's bravado faltered for a heartbeat, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. "And who do you think you are?" he spat, his bravado wavering. "It is now," the horseman replied, his posture unyielding. The horse pawed at the ground, an animal instinctively attuned to its surroundings, sensing the danger in the air. Marissa could feel its energy, a palpable force that sparked through the atmosphere. The bandit eyed the horseman, hesitant now, but the greed from earlier still sparked in his chest. He tightened his grip around the dagger, but it was clear he was weighing his options. A part of him realized he was outmatched, and the horseman sensed it too, calm but deadly. "Doesn't have to end badly for you," the horseman continued, his voice steady and measured. "Lay down your weapon and you'll walk away." For a brief moment, it felt like time stood still. Marissa watched as the bandit's eyes darted back and forth between the horseman and her, calculating, desperate. In that moment, the world outside faded. It was just them, the would-be victim and a protector, an unlikely alliance forged in the heat of fear. Then the bandit broke the silence, laughter bubbling forth, tinged with madness. "You think I'm afraid of you?" The horseman shifted slightly, his voice dropping lower, a predator preparing to strike. In a flash, as if orchestrated by fate itself, the bandit lunged forward, aiming for Marissa. But the horseman was faster, a blur of motion as he swung down from his mount. With a perfect, fluid movement, he interposed himself between Marissa and her attacker. The bandit's breath hitched, surprise etched across his face, but it was too late. The horseman swept in, disarming the bandit with a swift motion, sending the dagger spiraling into the dust at their feet. With a single, powerful shove, he sent the bandit sprawling to the ground. The man landed with a grunt, panic flooding his expression as he realized he was caught in a web he couldn't escape. "Get out of here!" the horseman growled, the promise of retribution lacing his words. The bandit scrambled to his feet, eyes wide with fear, and he bolted into the trees, vanishing into the evening shadows as swiftly as he had come, leaving only dust in his wake. Marissa stood there, breathless, processing everything as the adrenaline began to fade. The horseman turned to her then, his gaze softening, a quiet reassurance in his eyes. The sincerity of his voice melted away the remaining tension in her shoulders. "Yes, I think so." "Thank you," she managed to stammer, her heart still racing from the narrow escape. "Good," he said, the corner of his mouth curving into a faint smile. "I've been tracking that man for weeks." The muscles in his jaw tightened slightly, the weight of the encounters etched in the lines of his face. "But you stood your ground." Marissa felt a rush of warmth and gratitude wash over her, mingling with the remnants of fear. "I didn't have much of a choice," she said, her voice steadier now. "But it seemed like you were, watching." His gaze swept over the trail, thoughtful. "I've seen too much. Sometimes it's better to wait and observe." In that moment, they both recognized the unspoken truth. They were survivors in a world that could turn dark and unforgiving in an instant. She thought about the cold steel of the dagger, the desperation in the bandit's eyes, but she also thought of the resolve of the quiet horseman, standing as a bulwark against chaos. She asked, curious about the protector in front of her. There was a quiet strength to him, a depth that intrigued her. "Just passing through," he replied, casting a glance back toward the woods where the bandit had vanished. "But I've been keeping an eye on this area." "It's taken time to learn," she admitted, smiling a little at the compliment. "Sometimes they do," he replied. There was a shadow behind his eyes, a story untold. "But every lesson builds you." They stood together in the fading light, the weight of their shared experience settling around them like a cloak. Time seemed to stretch between them, silent and understanding. "I should go," he finally said, his voice low and deliberate. "People like that bandit often come back." The question slipped from her lips before she could catch it, the instinct to hold on to this moment tugging at her heart. He hesitated, the sunlight catching the glint of determination in his eyes. "Maybe. If you need me, look toward the hills at sunset." As he mounted his horse, a sleek silhouette against the darkening sky, Marissa felt a rush of anything but fear. A spark of hope ignited within her. As he turned to ride away, she called out, "Thank you for everything." "I know," he replied, his voice resonating with promise. "And remember, you're never truly alone." With that, he spurred his horse into action, the powerful creature carrying him swiftly into the growing night. Marissa stood alone on the trail for a long moment, the dust settling around her heart racing not with fear but with something profoundly new. When she finally turned and walked back toward her homestead, the shadows seemed less daunting. The world, while treacherous, was also filled with unexpected allies. In her chest, a quiet fire burned, igniting the understanding that sometimes, when darkness threatened to overwhelm, there emerged a light, a protector, ready to watch over those who dared to stand tall. And though she didn't know what tomorrow would bring, she felt a sense of purpose, not just in herself but in the unseen connections that bound them. The memories of fear were fading, replaced by the promise of strength, the recognition that even in the darkest moments, someone might just be watching after all. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of crimson and gold, as Marissa made her way down the lonely dirt road. The evening air was thick with the scent of blooming wildflowers, their colors dancing under the twilight. She loved this time of day, the way the light softened everything, but deep in her gut, something felt off. It was one of those quiet evenings when the world seemed still, too still. There was an eerie absence of sound, as if nature itself was holding its breath. Normally, the chirping of crickets or the distant rustle of leaves would comfort her, but not tonight. Tonight, the silence sent a shiver down her spine. As she walked, shadows began stretching, spilling out from the trees flanking the road, becoming grotesque shapes in the dim light. That's when she noticed it, a figure emerging from the darkness, cloaked in a tattered coat that flapped in the slight breeze. His eyes gleamed with a glint of mischief, but it was the dagger protruding from his belt that sent a jolt of fear through her. "Hey there, lady," he called out, his voice raspy like gravel crunching underfoot. Marissa's heart raced, each beat pounding in her ears like a war drum. She instinctively clutched the strap of her satchel tighter against her side. Inside were her few meager possessions, a couple of coins, some food, and a treasured metal locket, an heirloom that had belonged to her mother. The thought of losing it made her stomach twist with dread. She managed to say, her voice steadier than she felt. It was a question pregnant with fear but also defiance. "Just your valuables, sweetheart. Hand 'em over and I'll be on my way," he replied with a smirk that revealed yellowed teeth. She could sense danger radiating from him, a predator sizing up his prey. A panic thought raced through her mind. Should she run? Could she outrun him? Yet she knew all too well that loved ones and neighbors had vanished without a trace in these parts. Everyone said it was bandits like him who would leave them lost in the shadows. Just as she considered her options, a noise echoed from the tree line, a low rumble that felt more instinctive than cursory. The air crackled with tension, and then she saw him. A horseman, poised and powerful, rode out from between the trees, his silhouette framed against the dimming sky. Marissa's breath caught in her throat. The horseman was tall, his long coat billowing like a flag of defiance. His expression was calm, eyes dark and piercing, surveying the scene with an intensity that sent shivers down her spine. There was an unspoken promise in his posture that made her heart skip a beat. "Get away from her," he commanded, his voice steady and deep, carrying the weight of authority. The bandit's bravado faltered, uncertainty flickering across his features. He spat, yet his hand seemed to inch backward toward the hilt of his knife, as if he sensed the danger of this quiet figure. "I'm the one in charge here," the horseman replied, a flicker of a challenge in his eyes. Marissa felt a swell of relief wash over her, a fleeting glimpse of hope amidst the storm of fear. But she knew from stories whispered around campfires that bandits like the one before her were unpredictable, volatile like a coiling snake. The bandit sneered, drawing his knife out. "You think you can scare me?" But an unusual calm settled over the horseman. Instead of drawing a weapon, he seemed to merely wait, as if anticipating the bandit's next move. This was the kind of stillness that was both frightening and captivating, and Marissa found herself holding her breath, wondering how this would unfold. Without warning, the bandit lunged forward, a wild glint in his eye. In that split second, time stretched out. The horseman moved like a thunderbolt, quick and decisive. As the bandit thrust the knife forward, the horseman slipped off his horse, sidestepping the attack with a fluid grace that belied the tension in the air. In one swift motion, he grabbed the bandit's wrist, twisting it until the blade clattered to the ground. He spoke low but firm, his voice piercing through the clamor of panic. The bandit's eyes widened in shock and realization. The balance of power had shifted in an instant. Marissa watched, her heart pounding as the confrontation reached a breaking point. With a sudden surge of desperation, the bandit tried to break free, clawing at the horseman's grip, but the quiet figure remained resolute. "Enough," the horseman said, and the authority in his voice echoed through the trees. With sheer willpower, he shoved the bandit back, who stumbled and scrambled to recover. In that moment, Marissa saw something shift behind the bandit's wild eyes, the flicker of fear, the understanding of impending defeat. The horseman barked, and the bandit didn't need to be told twice. He turned and fled into the darkened woods, disappearing like a whisper in the night. Marissa stood frozen, breathing heavily as relief washed over her like a rainstorm. The tension dissolved as the danger receded, and she felt a rush of gratitude surge within her. The horseman, this quiet sentinel of the shadows, turned his gaze toward her, softening as he approached. He asked, his voice steady and reassuring. "Yes, I think so," she stammered, still recovering from the adrenaline. "Thank you." "What I do," he replied, a hint of a smile breaking through his stoic demeanor. "But you held your ground." Marissa felt warmth bloom in her chest. The horseman possessed a strength that was both tangible and calming. It reassured her that she'd been brave in a moment when fear could have swallowed her whole. She asked, curiosity bubbling to the surface. He shook his head, gazing out at the fading daylight. "Not exactly. I've been watching this area for a while. People like him, they don't just target anyone. They look for those they think are weak." The weight of his words settled on her, grounding the remnants of adrenaline swirling through her veins. "You saved me," she whispered, her heart swelling with gratitude. The horseman nodded, his demeanor shifting back to a more serious tone. But you should be careful. They often return after feeling humiliated. Marissa glanced in the direction the bandit had escaped, anxiety creeping back into her chest. Stay vigilant, he advised. Move with purpose and don't let fear rule you. Those words hung in the air like a promise, wrapping around her like a protective cloak. As the last slivers of sunlight dipped away, leaving only a twilight glow, she felt a connection to this quiet horseman. There was something comforting knowing there were those willing to stand guard against darkness. She asked, hope flaring within her chest. I mean, he considered her for a moment, revealing depths behind those dark eyes, understanding, empathy. In my own way, yes, but it's important you learn to protect yourself too. While those words weighed heavy on her heart, they also reignited something within her. She had always been the type to rely on her own two hands, but now she questioned if she could learn from this encounter. She asked, determination threading through her voice. It surprised her how ready she was to fight back against whatever was lurking in the shadows of her world. Start with what you have. Find out where your strengths lie, he replied, a faint smile appearing again, more genuine this time. Consider this day a lesson, and remember, courage means standing up despite fear. With every word, Marissa felt emboldened. A fire ignited deep inside. She glanced at the path ahead, which seemed less ominous than before. Perhaps it was the way he carried himself, no longer just a stranger on horseback, but a guide lighting her way through uncertainty. As they walked back toward her homestead side by side, she caught glimpses of who he was, a protector forged by experience, and she could feel that perhaps she was becoming something more too. In the fading light of that day, amidst uncertainty, a bond formed. It was a testament to resilience and bravery, forged in the flames of fear and hope. She realized then that while bandits might lurk in the shadows, so too could guardians rise to meet them. Together, they could face the darkness, refusing to let fear define their paths. As the last light faded behind the horizon, the promise of a new dawn lingered in the air, full of possibilities and strength yet to be discovered. The moon hung low in the night sky, casting its silver light over the winding dirt path where Marissa walked. Each step echoed with uncertainty as shadows danced around her, conjuring images of the stories she'd heard from other villagers. Tales of bandits who lurked in the darkness, ready to pounce on the unsuspecting. Tonight, however, the air felt different, charged with anticipation, like a storm ready to break. As she moved along, the soft crunch of gravel underfoot suddenly changed. The silence shattered as a figure stepped out from the darkness, a sinister grin stretching across his face. He leaned against a tree, arms crossed, the predatory glint in his eyes unmistakable. The dagger glinting from his belt caught the moonlight, and Marissa's heart raced as fear coursed through her. She swallowed hard, the lump in her throat making it difficult to speak. Home is the last place you should be. His voice dripped with malice, each word a dark promise. As the tension thickened, her mind raced. She could feel the weight of her small satchel at her side, the meager possessions inside feeling unbearably precious. Her mother's locket, her late father's compass, the coins gathered from days spent working on the farm, all reminders of the life she fought to protect. Then, from the edges of her vision, something shifted. A figure emerged from the shadows, moving with a quiet resolve that seemed to draw the eyes of the world itself. The horseman appeared tall and formidable, his silhouette framed against the moonlit backdrop. Mounted atop a majestic stallion, he radiated an air of authority and calm, a stark contrast to the bandit's chaotic energy. "Step away from her," the horseman commanded, his gaze unflinching, unwavering. The bandit turned, caught off guard, his bravado flickering momentarily. "And who do you think you are?" "Consider it your last warning," the horseman replied, voice steady and deep, like a mountain enduring a storm. Marissa felt a spark of hope ignite within her chest. Something about the horseman's presence settled her swirling fears. This didn't feel like a rescue, but rather a confrontation destined to unfold with a powerful grace. The bandit hesitated, eyeing the horseman as if weighing his options. His bravado began to falter. "Fear is not my goal," the horseman replied, a flicker of determination in his dark eyes. Without another word, the bandit lunged forward, a desperate wildness driving him. Time slowed, as if the world around them was pausing to witness the clash of wills. Marissa held her breath, anticipation twisting her stomach. The horseman moved like a whispering wind, quick and agile. As the dagger surged toward him, he sidestepped effortlessly, grabbing the bandit's wrist mid-lunge. In that split second, with a swift twist, he disarmed the man, sending the knife clattering to the ground. "Enough of this," the horseman growled, the authority of his voice reverberating through the night. The bandit stumbled back, surprise painting his features, panic flickering in his eyes. Marissa watched, transfixed as the horseman stood tall, the very embodiment of resolve. With a powerful shove, he sent the bandit sprawling to the ground, its roughness contrasting desperately with the gentleness of his earlier demeanor. "Leave now," the horseman said quietly, his voice holding a dangerous weight. The bandit scrambled to his feet, eyes wide with confusion and fear. He didn't look back as he disappeared into the shadows, swallowed whole by the darkness that had once seemed so threatening. A silence followed, palpable and thick, as Marissa's heart began to settle. The chaos of the moment began to fade, replaced by an overwhelming sense of relief. She turned to the horseman, who now dismounted, his tall figure casting a long shadow in the moonlight. He asked, his voice softer now, concern lacing his words. "Yes," Marissa said, her voice trembling slightly. He finished for her, a knowing look in his eyes. Many don't see the danger until it's too late. She felt a warmth bloom within her chest. Just moments ago, she had feared for her life, and now her heart fluttered with gratitude and awe. "Thank you. I was so scared," she admitted, suddenly overwhelmed by a flood of emotions. "Fear is natural," he replied, his gaze unwavering. "It's what you do with that fear that defines you." "I was lucky you were here," she said, still processing the confrontation. "You weren't just lucky," he corrected gently. "You showed courage. Many would have run." Marissa gazed at him, the weight of his words sinking in. Fighting through terror often required more strength than facing it head-on. In that moment, she saw in him a quiet strength, a resilience that resonated deep inside her spirit. "Are you?" she asked, curiosity creeping into her voice. "A protector does what needs to be done," he said simply, glancing toward the path the bandit had taken. "But I don't aim for recognition." The idea reverberated in her mind, what it meant to protect, to stand between danger and those who needed it most. She inquired, wanting to know more about the man before her. "I wander these parts," he replied, pausing as if choosing his words carefully. "There's much darkness in the world. I've learned to watch and wait rather than rush headlong into chaos." She asked, her voice small, the vulnerability creeping in. "Sometimes," he admitted with a hint of sadness. "But one learns to find companionship in silence." Marissa took in his words like a wise mantra. There was richness to be found in stillness, even when danger lurked nearby. Even now, in the aftermath of fear, she felt like they were forging an unspoken bond, a connection born from survival and strength. She asked, her curiosity piquing. "Be aware of your surroundings," he advised. "Look for the signs, the little things, trust your instincts." The moonlight cast soft shadows across his face. She was struck by how much wisdom lived in those words. "I want to be strong," she said, her resolve deepening. "You already are." "You just have to believe it," he replied, a gentle smile touching his lips. From that moment on, she felt a shift take place within her, a sense of purpose unfurling. Survival was about more than just avoiding danger. It was about finding the strength to face it, to become more than a victim. She asked hesitantly, feeling an instinctive pull toward his strength. He considered her for a moment, the world around them seeming to hold its breath. "For a while, yes. But you must also learn to stand alone one day," he said, the seriousness in his eyes a reminder of how fragile safety could be. They settled in together, leaning against a sturdy tree, the night stretching on as they shared stories of their lives. He spoke of distant mountains cloaked in mist, of rivers that flowed like silver ribbons through forests alive with secrets. She listened, entranced, absorbing every word as if he was weaving a spell with his tales. And soon she found her own voice. She shared memories of her childhood, the laughter of friends, and her dreams of a life lived boldly. Each story felt like a thread weaving their fates together, creating a bond sparked in danger but strengthened in vulnerability. Time grew fluid as they lost themselves in conversations, allowing the darkness to fade away, replaced by the warmth of shared understanding. But as dawn approached, the moment of light broke through the horizon, bathing them in soft warmth. "It's time for me to go," he said, sensing the shift in the air. "You'll be safe now." "I don't want you to go," she confessed, a pang of sadness gripping her. The thought of losing this newfound connection felt heavy, almost impossible. "You'll be all right," he assured her, his voice steady and calming. With that, he mounted his horse, the powerful creature shifting beneath him, ready to gallop into the day. Marissa felt an ache in her heart, a longing for his quiet strength, an understanding that she was not as alone as she had once thought. "Wait," she called out, taking a step closer. He paused, a flicker of a smile playing on his lips. "Names are just whispers in the wind." And with those parting words, he turned and rode into the dawn, the silhouette of horse and rider blending into the colors of the morning sky. As Marissa watched him go, she felt a surge of emotions wash over her, the remnants of fear, replaced by resolve. In his absence, she found the strength to face the world anew, fortified by the secrets they had shared beneath the cloak of darkness. With each step toward her home, she felt lighter, emboldened by the idea that she wouldn't run away from danger again. When faced with uncertainty, she could find the courage to stand tall, ready to confront whatever lies ahead. Even in silence, strength echoed, and she knew, somewhere in the shadows, Ren would still be watching. The crack of a twig echoed through the stillness of the evening as Marissa made her way down the narrow dirt path, the sun dipping low behind the hills. Shadows stretched long, enveloping her in a cloak of dusk. She loved walking home at this hour, with the last rays of light painting the sky in shades of violet and gold. But that day, a prickle of unease hung in the air, sharp and foreboding. A chill ran down her spine as she slowed her pace, glancing around. The tranquil sound of chirping crickets was conspicuously absent. An instinct, deep and primal, whispered to her, something wasn't right. The world felt too quiet, too watchful. "Penny for your thoughts," came a voice from the shadows, smooth yet dangerous. A figure stepped into view. He wore a worn cloak, the fabric tattered at the edges, and his eyes glinted with mischief and menace. A dagger hung loosely at his side, catching the fading light. Marissa's breath quickened. She managed to say, her voice steadier than she felt, "Just your belongings, sweetheart. Hand over your valuables and we can avoid any unpleasantness," he replied, a wicked smile curving his lips. Her heart raced as mounting panic clawed at her chest. She hugged her satchel closer, the small treasure inside suddenly feeling heavy, a handful of coins, some food, and the locket that had belonged to her mother. Each item represented memories, pieces of her life that she wasn't ready to lose. She demanded, her voice gaining a hint of authority born from desperation. The bandit laughed, a low, chilling sound. Just as fear threatened to swallow her whole, a rustle came from behind the bandit. Marissa barely had time to process the movement before a cloaked figure emerged from the trees. Tall and imposing, he sat astride a magnificent horse, its dark mane flowing like silk. The horseman's presence seemed to absorb the slinking shadows, a stillness enveloping him as he appraised the scene before him. "Step away from her," the horseman commanded, voice like thunder, calm but resonant. The bandit turned slowly, his confidence wavering as he faced this new threat. He spat, a tremor creeping into his voice. The horseman didn't flinch. "I'm the one who's watching over her." Marissa felt a flicker of hope, the tension in her chest loosening slightly. Here was someone not just willing to confront danger, but equipped to tackle it head-on. She could sense that the quiet man held a power that resonated in the air. The bandit challenged, trying to regain his bravado. "Or I will make you," the horseman replied, unyielding, gazing at the bandit with eyes that seemed to pierce through the darkness. The tension escalated, an electric charge hovering in the air. Marissa held her breath, anxiety wrapping tight like a vice around her heart. She could sense the impending clash, the weight of fate hanging by a thread. Then, without warning, the bandit lunged, knife glinting in the dim light. Time slowed as she watched the scene unfold. But in one swift motion, the horseman descended from his mount, moving with an agility that belied his size. With a fluid grace, he grabbed the bandit's wrist, twisting it until the dagger fell from his grip. Marissa gasped, shock flooding through her. The quiet horseman had turned the tide in an instant. The bandit staggered back, eyes wide with fear as he realized he was outmatched. The horseman said, his tone almost mocking. In one powerful shove, he sent the bandit sprawling to the ground. The shock of impact echoed through the forest, and the desperate villain scrambled to his feet, face pale, terror etched in every line. The horseman ordered, his voice low and fierce. The bandit didn't hesitate. He shot off into the woods, blending with the darkness, leaving behind only dust in his wake. Marissa stood frozen, breathless, as the adrenaline began to fade. The quiet horseman turned to her then, a calmness radiating from him that soothed her racing heart. She nodded slowly, the reality of what had just happened settling over her like a heavy quilt. "I think so. It's what I do," he replied, brushing off the tension with a casual wave. But there was a deeper gravity in his gaze, a connection that seemed to bind them in the aftermath of chaos. She asked, curiosity blooming alongside her gratitude. "Ren," he said simply, a shadow of a smile flickering across his face. The name rolled off her tongue as she considered its strength. "Why were you here? Were you?" "Sometimes it's the quiet ones who see the most," he replied, looking toward the path the bandit had fled. "I've been scouting this area for a while." Marissa glanced to where the bandit had disappeared, a knot of fear still lingering. "It's easy to underestimate the dangers that lurk in the shadows," he said, his voice even. Many would not have stopped to confront him, but you did. The compliment warmed her. "Exactly." He paused, his gaze searching hers. Marissa took a moment to absorb his words. Ren considered her question, a sheen of thought in his eyes. "There are many kinds of strength. Yours doesn't need to be physical," she said, uncertainty creeping into her voice. "You are stronger than you realize. Each encounter, each hardship builds resilience," he assured her. Just then, the memory of the bandit's sneer flashed in her mind, and the overwhelming flood of emotions returned. "What if he comes back? Then we will face them," Ren said, the conviction in his voice steady and unwavering. "Strength lies in unity," she asked, longing for the comfort of his presence. The woods, once familiar, now seemed menacing. "For as long as I can," he replied, holding her gaze steady. There was an understanding between them, a bond forged in that moment of danger. They began to walk, the cool night air enveloping them like a shroud. Ren didn't offer idle chatter. Instead, they shared stories of their lives, her memories of laughter and family, his tales of distant landscapes cloaked in mist, and the adventures that had shaped him. As he spoke, Marissa felt the weight of her previous fears beginning to lift. She could see the world through his eyes, the beauty, the danger, the intricate dance of existence that was both fragile and fierce. With every word shared, they drew closer, weaving in connection and understanding that formed an invisible thread binding their lives together. She asked after a time, sensing the seriousness behind his calm demeanor. "Loneliness can lead to clarity," he replied thoughtfully. "In solitude, I've found strength and purpose. Watching and learning takes time." A sense of admiration blossomed within her. This man, quiet and observant, was more formidable than any muscle-bound hero from the tales of her childhood. He had a strength that stemmed from patience and purpose, qualities she found deeply resonant. As the moon hung high, illuminating the path ahead, Marissa turned to him. "Always trust your instincts," he replied, his tone filled with earnestness. "Remember, strength isn't just physical. It's in the heart, in the choices we make." She felt the truth of his words settle within her, a truth she hadn't fully embraced until now. "Failure is merely a part of the journey," he said, an airy smile gracing his lips. With his words coursing through her, she found newfound resolve within. Perhaps she could become that stronger person, the one who faced fear head-on rather than running from it. As dawn approached, casting a gentle light across the horizon, Marissa knew their time together was limited. She turned to Ren, a rush of gratitude in her heart. "Thank you for everything, Ren." "I merely provided what was needed," he said, waving off the compliment, but Marissa could see the trace of humility in his smile. "You'll carry this strength with you long after I've gone." And in that moment, the path before them glimmered with potential, the shadows dissipating as morning light filled the air with warmth. She asked, a tinge of sadness settling in, "I cannot say for certain," he replied, his brows furrowed in contemplation, "but I will always be watching." With those final words, he mounted his horse, the powerful animal shifting beneath him. Marissa felt the ache of longing rise in her throat, the awareness that she was losing a connection she had just begun to embrace. She called out, stopping him in his tracks. "What if?" "Remember the lessons we've shared," Ren said, his expression softening. "Do not be afraid to call for help. Strength in numbers, Marissa." As he rode away into the dawn, her heart soared with a mixture of gratitude and courage. She felt transformed. The shadows from the night before no longer held the same weight. Marissa took a deep breath, grounding herself in the reality that she was not just the woman who had faced fear, but the woman who would rise from it, a reminder that every challenge could forge strength. And with that resolve growing stronger, she turned to walk home, ready to confront whatever the world had in store for her. She knew she had the strength to stand firm, boosted not just by her experiences, but by the quiet reassurance that somewhere, Ren would be watching. Marissa never thought much of the old dirt path winding through the forest. It was a familiar trail she took daily, a stretch of comfort and routine. But this evening, as she walked home, an unsettling feeling prickled at the back of her mind. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows that danced among the trees, their branches creaking like whispered warnings. Then she heard it, a crunch of leaves behind her, something shifting in the underbrush. Her heart raced as she quickened her pace, glancing over her shoulder. That's when she saw him. A man stepped out from the thicket, leaning casually against a tree. His tattered cloak rustled in the breeze, mismatched boots scuffed and worn. But what stopped her cold was the dagger glinting from his belt, the way his eyes narrowed with wicked interest. "Hey there, pretty thing," he called out, his voice rough and low, dripping with threat. "Why don't you come over here and let's make this easy?" Panic surged through her, a tidal wave of fear crashing against her resolve. Marissa stopped, clutching her satchel tightly against her side. Instinctively, she could feel everything inside it, just a few coins, a loaf of bread, and that old locket her mother had given her. But the thought of losing any of it made her feel sick. "I don't have much," she managed to say, her voice shaking. "Food," he mocked, stepping closer, the menace in his eyes intensifying. What a shame. Her heart thudded ominously in her chest. She glanced around desperately, but the trees seemed to loom closer, swallowing her in shadows. Just as fear threatened to tighten its grip, a sudden rustle pierced the air from deeper in the woods. The bandit's eyes shifted momentarily, uncertainty flickering across his features. Before she could catch her breath, a figure emerged from the darkness, tall and imposing. He rode a sleek black horse, the animal's hooves barely making a sound as they hit the forest floor. The horseman's presence was a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding. He wore a weathered cloak that flowed behind him like a shadow, and his face, partially obscured by the darkness, radiated an intensity that could only belong to a protector. "Let her go," the horseman commanded, his deep voice resonating through the trees like thunder rumbling far away. Marissa felt a rush of relief flood through her veins as hope illuminated the darkness. The bandit's bravado wavered, his confidence faltering. He spat, glaring at the horseman, yet the fear was palpable in his voice. "It is now," the horseman replied, his expression resolute and unwavering. There was a calm strength in his eyes that disarmed the threat in front of them. Marissa watched, her heart pounding in her chest, as the tension hung thick in the air. Would this stranger be the hero she desperately needed? The bandit snarled, desperation driving him to charge forward with surprising speed. In an instant, the horseman was off his mount, moving with an agility that belied his size. Time stretched in that moment as he sidestepped the attack with effortless grace. With a quick, fluid motion, he grabbed the bandit's wrist, twisting it until the knife clattered to the ground. The horseman growled, his voice filled with authority. The bandit's bravado crumbled, panic washing over his features. He stumbled back and attempted to escape, but the horseman wasn't done yet. With a swift motion, the horseman shoved the bandit to the ground, the sound of impact echoing through the trees. It was a decisive act that sent a shiver of power through Marissa. The bandit lay there, fear etched into every line of his face, realizing he had underestimated his opponent. "Get out of here," the horseman warned, his voice low and stern. The bandit scrambled to his feet, sprinting away into the shadows, leaving Marissa and the horseman alone amid the tranquil forest. Breathless and shaken, Marissa looked up at her savior. "Thank you," she whispered, trying to find her voice amidst the chaos. The horseman approached her slowly, studying her with an intensity that felt both comforting and unnerving. "You did well to stand your ground," he said, his voice steady. Marissa felt a flush of warmth at his words. "Fear is a natural response," he replied, his gaze unwavering. As she slowly absorbed his words, she found herself taking deep breaths, the adrenaline from the encounter slowly subsiding. She asked, curiosity tugging at her. "I've been watching this area," he replied, glancing toward the path the bandit had taken. "I've seen too many innocent people suffer at the hands of those who prey on the weak." It struck her then. This man, this quiet horseman, had made a choice. It was not just a random stranger. He was someone who chose to protect, to stand guard against the darkness in the world. Her heart swelled with gratitude. "You saved my life," she said earnestly, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's my duty," he responded, yet his humility was evident. Marissa considered his words, realizing that perhaps she'd always underestimated her own abilities. Could she be more than just a victim? She asked, wanting to know more about this enigmatic protector. "I roam these lands finding those in need," he said, "but I don't seek recognition." Even as darkness loomed, she began to see the light in his words, that in every moment of insecurity, there exists a choice to stand tall, to be a shield for those who cannot protect themselves. She blurted out, a sudden rush of emotion filling her. The forest felt less intimidating with him by her side. For a moment, he paused, weighing her request in the quiet of the evening. "For as long as you need," he finally answered, his voice softening. They walked together, the world shifting into a tranquil ambience that felt almost surreal after the chaos. With each step, Marissa's heart began to settle. In the safety of his presence, she felt transformed like a fragile flower opening in the warm embrace of sunlight. He asked, breaking the silence between them. "Marissa," she replied with a shy smile. It felt good to share a name, a piece of herself with him. "Marissa," he repeated, savoring the sound. "You carry strength within you more than you realize." As they continued down the path, she opened up about her life, her dreams, her fears. Each word felt cathartic, clear as the night sky above. The quiet horseman listened intently, offering subtle nods of encouragement. "Sometimes I feel trapped in this little town," she admitted, glancing at the trees passing by. "I want to explore, to be brave. Fear can be a powerful enemy," he said thoughtfully. "But remember, it can also be a teacher." In that moment, something clicked inside her. The fear she felt wasn't just a barrier. It was an invitation to rise up and meet the challenges ahead. "Ren," she said, testing the name on her tongue. His brow furrowed as he considered her request. "Bravery is not learned in a day, nor is it found in grand gestures." "Then teach me," she implored, determination brimming in her voice. A smile tugged at his lips, a glimmer of pride shining in his eyes. "The journey begins with small steps. Each choice you make adds layers to your strength." As the moon crested the treetops, casting a silver glow, she felt a connection forming between them, a bond forged from shared experience and the will to overcome. Ren had shown her not just the danger in the woods, but the possibilities that lay within herself. Before long, they reached the edge of her village. The lights flickered to life in the distance, tiny beacons against the dark. Marissa stopped, reluctant to let the moment end. "Thank you, Ren," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "It's you who has changed," he replied gently. "You realize that even in the dark there is light." He turned to mount his horse when she called out, "Wait." He paused, glancing back at her. "If you need me, look to the hills at night. I'll be watching," he said, a whisper of promise dancing on the breeze. With that, he rode off into the night, a silhouette against the shimmering moon. Marissa stood there, every fiber of her being buzzing with newfound energy, her heart filled with the weight of gratitude and resolve. As she stepped onto the path toward home, she felt the echoes of fear fade away, replaced by a sense of purpose. She wasn't just a girl walking the woods anymore. She was a warrior in her own right, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Through the shadows, a quiet strength surged within her. With every step, she was no longer defined by fear, but by the courage to stand tall and embrace her fate, knowing that no matter the darkness, she would never be alone. It was a quiet evening in Marissa's small village. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the fields, filling the air with the scent of blooming wildflowers. She felt a sense of peace wash over her as she stepped onto the familiar dirt path leading home. The road wound through the tranquil woods, a comforting route she had walked countless times. Yet tonight felt different, charged with an inexplicable tension that made her skin prickle. As she ventured deeper into the forest, a sudden rustle echoed through the trees, sending a chill down her spine. Slowly, she turned her head, eyes scanning the dimly lit path behind her. That's when she spotted him, a man lingering just deep enough in the shadows, but his eyes glinted like a predator watching its prey. He wore a ragged cloak, his face obscured, but the way he shifted, almost too confident, made her heart race. "Hey there, lass," he called out, his voice low and smooth yet laced with menace. "Mind handing over your valuables?" Marissa's throat went dry. Fear washed over her, an icy wave crashing against her resolve. She instinctively clutched her satchel, a small leather bag that carried her meager possessions, some coins, a piece of bread, and her mother's locket, a precious heirloom she could not bear to lose. She stammered, her voice trembling but still trying to sound assertive. The bandit stepped closer, his grin widening as he savored her fear. "Oh, I don't think you want to make this difficult for yourself," he said, brandishing his dagger. Panic surged within her. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but she was frozen, a deer caught in the headlights of an oncoming vehicle. Would he really hurt her? Would anyone even hear her scream in this desolate part of the forest? A sudden noise from the brush broke the tension, a noise that felt like the crack of thunder. Marissa turned, desperate for a glimmer of hope, and there he was. A horseman emerged from the shadows, tall and formidable, mounted on a striking black horse. His presence radiated a calm strength, as if he were the very embodiment of a guardian sent to protect her. "Let her be," he commanded, his voice deep and firm, echoing through the ominous stillness. The bandit froze, surprise evident on his face. "And who are you?" he retorted, but there was a tremor in his voice, a flicker of doubt. "It is now," the horseman said, his eyes unyielding, carrying a weight that seemed to ward off the shadows around them. Marissa could hardly breathe but felt a surge of relief. Here was someone ready to confront the danger that threatened her, a silent sentinel who had chosen to intervene. The bandit challenged, but the bravado was quickly fading. "Fear isn't what I intend to evoke," the horseman replied, voice steady. Marissa held her breath, heart pounding like a war drum. She could sense the tension in the air thickening, the world around them holding its breath. Then, in an explosive moment, the bandit lunged, knife glinting in the fading light. Time seemed to stretch as the horseman moved. He was a blur of motion, quick and fluid, stepping aside with ease. In one swift, practiced maneuver, he disarmed the bandit, wrenching the knife from his grip and sending it clattering to the ground. "I warned you," the horseman said, his voice low, a rumble that carried the authority of years of experience. The threat and danger that danced in the space between them shifted immediately, revealing the true predator. The bandit stumbled backward, fear now replacing arrogance. He squeaked, panic flooding his voice. "Then leave," the horseman commanded, his eyes piercing through the fearsome facade. With a swift shove, he sent the bandit sprawling into the underbrush, the sound echoing like a clap of thunder in the night. Without looking back, the man scrambled to his feet and fled away into the depths of the forest, leaving only silence behind him. Marissa stood, breathless, processing the whirlwind of events. The horseman turned to her, his gaze softening, an unexpected kindness in his eyes. He asked, voice lowering, concern threading through his tone. "Yes," she whispered, the weight of gratitude flooding through her. "I think so, thank you." "It's what I do," he replied simply, yet there was a depth to his demeanor that suggested he had spent a lifetime nurturing that resolve. Marissa caught her breath, her heart racing as adrenaline wore off. She asked, curiosity creeping into her voice. "In a way," he replied, glancing back toward the dim path where the bandit had disappeared. "I've been watching this area. There are too many like him who prey on the unsuspecting." She felt a warm rush of gratitude at his words, an understanding that she wasn't just a stranger to him but a person worth protecting. You really saved me," she managed to say, the weight of that truth sinking in. Courage often comes in quiet moments, he said, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. And you stood your ground. But I wasn't brave, she confessed, feeling the remnants of fear washed away by gratitude. Fear is a natural reaction, he explained, but it's how you react to fear that shapes you. His words resonated deeply with her. Perhaps what happened this night wasn't just about survival but growth, about discovering her own strength in a moment of terror. She asked, wanting to connect with this guardian who had come to her aid. Ren, he replied, the name rolling off his tongue like a promise. Marissa, she said, feeling a connection grow between them, a bond knit in the fabric of that fraught moment. Remember, Marissa, he said, locking eyes with her. True strength lies not just in physical power but in resilience. As the shadows began to lengthen and the sun slipped lower behind the trees, she felt a strange awakening within her, a spark ignited by his presence, the choice to confront fear rather than be paralyzed by it. She asked, a vulnerability creeping into her voice. For as long as you need, he said sincerely, and they began to walk further along the path together. As they walked, the tranquility of the forest returned, broken only by the soft sounds of rustling leaves and the gentle cadence of their footsteps. Marissa shared stories of her life in the village, of the laughter, the community, the hopes and dreams that colored each day. Ren listened intently, a silent understanding between them. And then it struck her this vulnerable moment with him was turning into an unexpected alliance. She asked, wanting to know more about this quiet protector. I roam where I am needed, he replied. I've seen too many innocent people suffer. There's a darkness in the world, but there is also light. I never thought someone like you existed, she said, marveling at the man beside her. You're so different can be good, he said with a hint of a smile. Every person has their own story, their own battles. As the evening wore on, she began to feel a newfound sense of courage, bolstered by the connection they shared. The world outside of their conversation faded away. It was just the two of them standing against the dark. She asked suddenly, the plea tumbling out before she could reel it back in. His gaze softened, an unwavering calmness settling within him. Strength is not something that can be taught in a day, he said thoughtfully. It comes from experience, from facing challenges, and from learning to trust yourself. A fire ignited within her, a spark of determination. Then teach me, Ren. A smile broke across his face, genuine and warm. You're brave, Marissa. Many would shy away from such a decision. As twilight embraced the forest, she felt the echoes of danger fade, replaced by a sense of hope blossoming in her heart. Their connection had birthed something precious, a resolve to rise above fear, to confront the shadows instead of running from them. Eventually, they reached the edge of her village, where the first lights twinkled like stars in the night. Marissa hesitated, reluctant to part ways. You've changed me tonight, she murmured. It's you who has changed, he replied, his voice low. Suddenly, a swell of emotion surged within her. She asked, her voice trembling slightly. Then remember our time together, he said, his expression serious. If you feel lost, call out for help. Marissa asked, her heart heavy with the thought of his departure. If you need me, look to the hills at night, he promised, his voice barely above a whisper. As he mounted his horse, Marissa felt a mixture of loneliness and gratitude wash over her. Thank you for everything, Ren, she said, her voice thick with emotion. With a nod, he rode off into the night, a dark silhouette melded with the shadows. She watched him go, feeling a strange sense of empowerment growing within. Every moment of fear, every challenge faced it had all led her here, to this very point where she was no longer just a girl in the woods, but a warrior ready to embrace life. As she turned and walked into her village, the warmth of newfound strength filled her soul, a light that would guide her through the darkness that lay ahead. She had faced fear, drawn courage from silence, and walked with a guardian who taught her the power within her. And as she stepped onto the road leading home, she knew she wouldn't just survive. She would thrive, ready to face whatever tomorrow would bring. No longer just a passerby in life, but a force to be reckoned with. In her heart, Ren's teachings would always echo, and deep down, she felt confident that she was never truly alone. The earthy smell of pine mingled with the coolness of the evening air as Marissa wound her way down the familiar dirt path. Sunlight dipped below the horizon, casting elongated shadows that stretched toward her like fingers reaching out from the dark. There was something about this time of day that usually brought her peace, but today was different. She could feel it. Her senses heightened, each rustle of leaves, each snap of a twig seemed louder in the silence that surrounded her. As she stepped deeper into the woods, that familiar path began to feel less inviting. The weight of the forest pressed down on her, shadows thickening around the edges of her vision. Suddenly, a low growl shattered the stillness. Panic rocketed through her. Was it just her imagination, or was something or someone lurking in the dark? Then, out of the shadows, he emerged, a figure cloaked in tattered rags, his eyes gleaming like a predator's under the dim light. The dagger at his belt caught the last slivers of sunlight, a glint that made Marissa's heart thrash against her ribs. "Hey there, pretty lady," he drawled, his voice smooth yet laced with malice. "Why don't you make this easy for both of us?" Her throat felt tight as a noose. Words swirled in her mind, but as fear gripped her, all that came out was a shaky breath. She glanced down at her satchel, clutching it tighter to her side. Inside, her few coins, a piece of bread, and her mother's locket, the only thing she had left of her old life weighed heavily on her conscience. She managed to shout, surprising herself with the defiance in her voice. The bandit took a step forward, the menace in his posture sending icy tendrils of fear crawling up her spine. "Oh, come on, don't make this difficult." Just then, a different sound sliced through the tension, the soft thud of hooves on the ground growing louder. Both Marissa and the bandit turned to see a horseman emerge from the dense trees, tall and commanding, riding a magnificent black stallion. His presence was instantaneous electricity, filling the air with a charge that rendered the danger at hand almost childlike in comparison. "Get away from her," the horseman commanded, his voice steady and deep like the rumble of distant thunder. The bandit hesitated, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. He responded, trying to retain his bravado. The horseman did not flinch. "Look around you," he said, gesturing to the shadows that watched from the corners of the forest. Marissa felt a rush of gratitude wash over her, as if the clouds of fear that had hung over her were being dissolved by sunlight. This man was a protector, a guardian conjured from her deepest hopes in this moment of danger. With a snarl, the bandit lunged, knife flashing in the fading light. Time slowed as Marissa held her breath, heart pounding in her ears. The horseman moved like wind, swift and precise. He sidestepped the bandit's attack with an effortless grace that seemed almost unreal. In an instant, he seized the bandit's wrist, twisting it, forcing the dagger to clatter to the ground. "Enough," he said, voice low and authoritative. The bandit staggered backward, shock flashing across his face, the bravado evaporating like the evening mist. Marissa stood frozen, a blend of relief and disbelief washing over her. The quiet horseman, with strength emanating from him, had turned the tables. "Get out of here," he warned, directing his fierce gaze at the bandit. The bandit scrambled to his feet and took off into the woods, disappearing like a shadow just as swiftly as he had appeared. Silence hung in the air, heavy yet calming, and Marissa exhaled for the first time since the confrontation began. The horseman asked, dismounting gracefully, his eyes softening as he turned to her. "Yes," she breathed, still shaken but grateful. "Thank you, I didn't know. I thought. You faced the danger," he said, cutting through her frantic thoughts. Courage, the weight of the word echoed in her mind. In that moment, it struck her that she had truly chosen to face fear instead of simply running away. "I was terrified," she admitted, the truth spilling from her lips. "Terror can be a powerful teacher," he replied, gazing into the distance as if contemplating something deeper. She looked at him, admiration swelling in her chest. The horseman shrugged, a subtle confidence about him. "I've been watching these woods for some time. There are predators lurking in the darkness, and too many get caught off guard." His sincerity struck her deeply. This wasn't just a random stranger who happened upon the scene. He was a guardian, someone who chose to protect others from the darkness. She felt a warmth blooming in her chest. "Thank you again," she said earnestly. "It's what I do," he replied, but there was something else in his eyes, an understanding that held more weight than mere duty. She ventured, wanting to know more about this quiet horseman who had come to her aid. "Ren," he replied simply, the name rolling off his tongue like an unspoken promise. "I'm Marissa," she said, the two names weaving together like a finely crafted tapestry. "We all have our battles to fight, Marissa," Ren said, his tone serious. He gestured around them, taking in the trees, the path, the remnants of their recent confrontation. "Each encounter shapes us." Her heart raced at the realization. Suddenly, she felt emboldened, a flicker of courage igniting inside her. "I want to be strong, Ren." "Strength comes in many forms," he replied, meeting her gaze with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "It doesn't always mean physical power." "I want to learn," she said, determination threading through her voice. A small smile crept onto his face. "You're already on the right path, Marissa." As they continued down the path together, the atmosphere shifted from trepidation to camaraderie. They walked side by side as the woods began to fill with a serene calmness, the moon casting silver light across their path. Marissa shared her dreams, memories of her childhood, and the hopes that propelled her forward. Ren listened intently, offering nods of encouragement as she spoke. She asked, a curiosity brewing within. "I've traveled many lands," he replied thoughtfully. "There's often a balance between light and dark, safety and danger." She asked, sensing a hint of sadness in his voice. "Loneliness can lead to clarity," Ren said, glancing toward the stars beginning to dot the sky. "In solitude, I've found strength and purpose." As they neared the village, the twinkling lights began to come into view. Marissa felt an ache in her heart, realizing their journey together was coming to an end. She asked, vulnerability spilling from her heart. "For as long as you need," he said, a thread of warmth in his voice. But as they reached the edge of the village, the reality of their circumstances began to settle in. "You've changed me tonight, Ren," she said sincerely. The flickering lights turned the path golden, and they stood quietly, each contemplating the journey they just shared. "You found that strength within yourself," he replied, a seriousness threading through his tone. "Never forget that it's there." Taking a step closer, she felt an overwhelming urge to hold on to this moment, to capture it forever. She whispered, the fear creeping back in. "Then stand firm," he replied with unwavering confidence and a fierce dedication that brought hope surging back within her. "Do not hesitate to call for help. You're not alone in this." As he turned to mount his horse, Marissa felt an unexpected blend of sorrow and gratitude swell inside her. She asked, fearing that the answer might be no. "If you need me, look to the hills at night," he said softly, a promise lingering in the air. With a nod, he kicked his horse into motion, riding into the dark shadows of the woods, becoming a silhouette against the moonlight. As she watched him disappear, a mix of longing and empowerment surged through her. Marissa turned to make her way home, the familiar path now taking on a different hue. She felt different too, as if the fears that had once consumed her were being replaced by a recent epiphany. Her heart beat steadily against the backdrop of a brave new world unfolding before her. Each step filled her with a sense of purpose, a quiet determination that reverberated through her very being. She had faced danger tonight and emerged not as a victim, but as a warrior. Her encounter with Ren had opened her eyes to a strength within, a power waiting to be harnessed. As the village lights twinkled like stars above her head, she felt a sense of pride take root in her heart. No longer would she allow fear to dictate her path. With every challenge that lay ahead, she would summon her courage and weave it into a fabric of resilience, knowing that she had a protector watching over her and that she could rise to meet the darkness. Whatever awaited her, she was prepared, ready to face it all with newfound strength and the lessons learned from a quiet horseman who had chosen to watch and protect. In that moment, under the vast expanse of the night sky, she took a deep, steadying breath, embracing the path ahead with an open heart. The journey was just beginning. The sun dipped below the jagged horizon, casting long shadows over the winding dirt path. Marissa tightened her grip around her satchel, the familiar scent of wildflowers and earth filling her senses. Normally, this was her favorite part of the day, a peaceful walk home after a long day at the market. But today felt different. The air was thick, electric, as if the world itself was holding its breath. As she moved deeper into the woods, the chirping of birds suddenly ceased. A heavy silence enveloped her and her gut twisted with unease. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Deciding to quicken her pace, she glanced over her shoulder, her heart racing. That's when she noticed him, a figure partially hidden behind a tree, cloaked in shadows. "Hey there, pretty lady," he rasped, stepping into the fading light. The glint of a dagger flashed at his waist and her blood ran cold. Panic surged through her, a tidal wave of fear crashing against her resolve. She clutched her satchel tighter, feeling its weight, the coins she had saved, a small loaf of bread and her mother's locket, an heirloom she could never bear to lose. She shouted, trying to inject a note of authority into her quivering voice. Now, he taunted, advancing toward her, a smirk dancing on his lips. "This will be much easier for both of us if you cooperate." He brandished the dagger and her heart raced as instinct screamed at her to run. But before she could move, the air shifted, and from the shadows of the trees emerged a figure on horseback, a quiet, tall man, cloaked in dark colors. His horse, a powerful stallion, stepped lightly beside him, exuding an aura of calm intensity. "Step away from her," the horseman commanded, his voice slicing through the tension like a blade. The bandit froze, surprise flickering in his eyes. He snarled. "I'm someone who won't let you hurt her," the horseman replied, his gaze unyielding. There was a quiet strength in his presence that seemed to absorb the darkness around them. Marissa's breath caught in her throat. Could this stranger really protect her? She held her ground, instinctively feeling that she was not alone in this moment. The bandit barked, trying to reclaim his bravado, but the hesitation in his voice betrayed him. The horseman's tone was steady, calm yet fierce, like the calm before a storm. Suddenly, the bandit lunged, dagger raised, intent on making his threat a reality. Time seemed to freeze as Marissa watched in horror, but the horseman reacted in a flash, quick and precise. He leaped from his horse, sidestepping the attack with an ease that sent shockwaves of awe coursing through Marissa. With one powerful movement, he grabbed the bandit's wrist, twisting it until the dagger fell to the ground with a dull thud. The bandit stumbled back, panic flooding his features as he realized the strength of his opponent. The horseman growled, voice low and commanding. The bandit's bravado turned into desperation as he caught sight of the horseman's unwavering gaze. The bandit pleaded, fear finally winning over arrogance. "Get out of here," the horseman commanded, shoving the man back into the shadows. The bandit scrambled to his feet, darting into the forest, fear evident in his every movement. Marissa stood, breathless, processing the whirlwind of events. The quiet horseman turned to her, concern softening his features. "Yes," she managed, the weight of gratitude flooding through her. "It's my purpose," he replied simply, but the sincerity in his eyes made her feel a sense of safety she hadn't known before. She asked, curiosity piquing as she gathered her thoughts. "Ren," he said, the name rolling off his tongue with a certain gravity. "I'm Marissa," she offered, a small smile creeping onto her face. "Why were you out here?" "I've been watching these woods," he replied, glancing into the trees where the bandit had fled. "I know the dangers that lurk here," she asked, surprised by the inquiry that surfaced. "You stood your ground when most would have run," he said, eyes locking onto hers. "That takes bravery." Marissa felt warmth bloom inside her. "I was terrified," she admitted, the truth spilling out. "Fear can be a powerful catalyst," Ren replied, his gaze drifting toward the horizon, lost in thought. As they stood there, surrounded by the fragrant trees and the dusk settling in around them, she contemplated his words. This was a moment that changed everything. For too long, she had allowed fear to define her, but in the face of danger tonight, she had stood still. She had faced it. She asked, her voice steady, the newfound confidence building within her. Ren regarded her for a moment, the corners of his mouth curling into a subtle smile. "Bravery doesn't come from never being afraid," he said. "It's about confronting those fears and learning to harness them." Marissa's heart swelled with determination. Then, as they prepared to walk back down the path, she couldn't shake a lingering fear. She asked, her expression turning serious. "Fear is a choice," Ren replied firmly. "You can choose to let it control you, or you can face it head-on. Trust in yourself, Marissa." With every step they took, Marissa felt a strange blend of safety and exhilaration. The forest that had once felt like a prison was slowly transforming into a sanctuary filled with promise. As darkness enveloped the surroundings, she caught glimpses of Ren's strength, a stillness that radiated calm yet whispered of storms brewing beneath the surface. For a while, they walked in silence, punctuated only by the rustle of leaves and the quiet chirping of nocturnal creatures awakening to the night. Marissa felt a bond forming, woven from shared experiences and the raw thread of vulnerability. She wanted to know more about this man who had come to her in her time of need. She asked, breaking the silence, her curiosity taking hold. "Ever since I was a child," he replied, a hint of nostalgia coloring his voice. "I grew up among a community that valued strength and courage. I watched as too many fell victim to those who preyed on their weaknesses." "That's incredible," she said, admiration spilling over. "Being so selfless." "Sometimes people need reminders," he said quietly. They reached the edge of her village. The lights of home sparkled like stars against the darkened sky. Marissa felt a mix of reluctance and anticipation. She didn't want the moment to end, but she could feel the warmth of safety drawing near. "Thank you for being there," she said, sincerity pressing heavily in her chest. Ren turned to her, a shadow crossing his face. "You're the one who faced your fear, Marissa," she asked suddenly, anxiety creeping back in as the reality of their parting loomed overhead. "Just a bit longer." "For a little while," he agreed, the softness in his tone kindling warmth inside her. As they lingered at the village's edge, the weight of the world hung heavy in the air. Just as Marissa found her voice to ask another question, she heard it, a low rustling behind them. Her stomach dropped and instinct kicked in. "Ren," she began, but a shadow leapt from the trees and the bandit reappeared, rage burning in his eyes. He yelled, fueled by desperation. Marissa felt the blood drain from her face. Fear surged through her body, clenching around her heart. She shouted instinctively, but Ren stood firm, shielding her from the rush of chaos, the protective aura surrounding him like an impenetrable wall. "Stay behind me," he ordered calmly, his voice steady as the dagger emerged from the bandit's grasp. The bandit charged forward, rage propelling him, reckless and unyielding. Marissa's breath caught in her throat, terror weaving through her thoughts like a treacherous vine. Would Ren really be able to defend them again? But as the dagger caught the faint light of the moon, she saw something shift in Ren, a quiet intensity, an ancient strength. "You may regret this choice," he warned, eyes narrowing, focused on the approaching danger, the calm before a storm. As the bandit lunged, the forest erupted into action. Would this moment define everything for Marissa? Would this be the moment her courage finally eclipsed her fear? In the heart of the darkness, tensions peaked. The air crackled with uncertainty. There was no turning back now. Each heartbeat rang out like a war drum, the world hanging in the balance.